I was starting to think about starting my own company and offering my services on a consulting basis instead of trying to find work when I checked my email and found a note from Linda's friend, Eve. I'd heard from her a few times since Linda's visit. The first contact had been her congratulations on making it hard to track me. I thanked her and told her that if I'd known I was in a game of hide and go seek, I'd have made it even harder. After that, there'd been a bit of a flirty conversation and then nothing for a while. The second time I heard from her, she sent me a listing for a job with a company that was working in Kandahar. The money looked good, but I was leery of any job where I had to wear body armor and bombings were a way of life. After that, she sent me a few gag jobs, one for a high school computer science teacher. I told her that I'd take another look at the Kandahar job. The kind of bombs that you found in high schools blew up over 9 months and amputated your paycheck. That got me some laughter and a picture of an extremely innocent-looking girl in a bitch's schoolgirl costume. She was fully clothed and there was nothing overtly sexual about it, but the innocent expression on her face and the big, trusting eyes, combined with the plaid skirt and white blouse, was arousing. I asked if that was a self-portrait, and she stopped messaging me back. I'd figured I'd offended her, and that was the end of it. I'd thought about apologizing a few times, but I hadn't really done anything wrong. We were bantering back and forth and suddenly she stopped. Today's email, though, was interesting. She suggested that I attend a conference in LA later in the month for cybersecurity. That wasn't really my specialty, but she knew that. It was her specialty, though. I sent her off a quick email asking her for information on the dates, fees, contact for registration, and what hotels they were using for the conference. I figured I'd hear from her sometime overnight, but I didn't even have my laptop closed when she was sending a reply back. I looked over the details and thought that while it was out of my wheelhouse, I might want to branch out and start shifting my focus. I messaged the conference organizers and explained that I'd been asked to attend by a colleague and that I was interested in registration. I was sent a set of forms to fill out and return. I paid the registration cost, booked a hotel and a flight, and got my plans for the conference settled. I sent Eve back a message that I was registered and I'd see her there. I went about my business and told everyone about my plans. Mike and Mary were both supportive. Rosa was interested and Linda said that she'd talked to Eve about the week-long conference. I was still working around the house and around the basement in particular, so I wasn't moping around, getting in the way. Mary drove me to the airport that morning and I was nervous and excited. I wasn't sure how much I'd get out of the conference and I wasn't sure how I'd fit with Eve, but I was looking forward to both. I was a day early for the conference, but most people were here already. My trouble started when I got to the hotel. "What do you mean? You don't have a booking for me?" I asked. "I paid for the room weeks ago." I pulled out the receipt and passed it to him. He looked it up in the computer and shook his head. "I'm sorry, sir. There appears to be some sort of a mistake. That reservation is listed as canceled." "Well, I didn't cancel it and didn't give anyone authorization to cancel it," I told him. "I apologize, sir. I'm not certain how this happened," he said, frowning at the screen. I took out my phone and accessed my banking app, checking my account, and no, the money hadn't been returned to my account. I told him that, and he looked sheepishly at me. The room was originally booked for a no-refund rate, he informed me. I was directed to a manager, and the whole thing turned into a nightmare. I was stood there in the lobby for a couple of hours while they tried to convince me that I was simply out the $1,200 I'd paid for my hotel for the conference. In the end, I called the conference organizers and told them what was going on and that it looked like I wouldn't be able to attend because of the problem. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, came the reply through the phone. I stood fuming, humiliated and angry. I was starting to feel like my head was going to explode. Just as I was about to say screw it and walk away, an older man approached the desk and asked for his reservation. He was processed, though, with disgusting ease, and I was infuriated all over again. When he got his room card, instead of heading for the elevators, he came and handed me the key. "Mr. Hamilton," he said, "my name's Greg Martin. We spoke on the phone. If you'll let me show you to your room, I'll explain what happened." I looked at him warily, but took the card from him. The hotel staff were watching with some interest, so I let him lead me to the elevators. The room he brought me to was better than the one that I'd originally booked, I noticed. "I apologize profusely," he said as soon as we were in the room. "It's something of a tradition for us to do this every year. It's an exercise in showing how easy it is for security breaches to affect everyday life. If you hadn't been a first-time attendee, you'd have known about it. Usually, the attendee calls us right away, and we get them to their new booking right away. I'm embarrassed that this happened. When we hadn't heard, we assumed that you discovered our joke and had decided to straighten it out yourself. We didn't realize that you'd been fighting to get your booking reinstated all this time. You have my sincerest apologies." I nodded. I was at a conference about cybersecurity. I just learned a valuable lesson in how much faith we put in the system. I appreciate your candor, Mr. Martin, I told him. To be honest, cybersecurity hasn't been my focus, but I was encouraged to attend, and the job market in my own field has convinced me that I might want to shift my focus. He asked me some questions about my training and experience and seemed to like what he heard. Some people just use the conference to network and make contacts, he admitted. There's a lot of white-hat hackers here this week. They're never a bad group to make friends with. You need to be prepared for them to know everything about your online life, though. They'll figure out who you email, what adult movie you watch, how often you check Facebook, everything. You might also want to put a piece of tape over your webcam. Some of them really will go that far. I nodded. So the hotel doesn't give you grief about crawling into their booking system every year? I asked, interested. It's great for them, he said. We test their security for them and provide them with a detailed report of how we breached their security, and in exchange, we get to book a suite for one conference attendee and their money is refunded. Your account will be refunded before you leave the conference. A normal consulting for something like this costs more than double what they lose on the rooms. I nodded. That's interesting, I admitted. I'd probably be a little more jovial about it if I'd been in on the joke about 3 hours ago, but it's an eloquent way to show how important security is. He looked relieved to hear me say that. That's why we do it, he confirmed to me. Thanks for being a good sport about it. In years past, some of the attendees have been irate for days. Sometimes it sparks follow-up pranks from the other people. One year, they reprogrammed a laptop to scream obscenities whenever the owner typed a letter. They'd recorded his voice all week, and his own voice would scream insults at him no matter what he did. I laughed about that. Sounds like it's better to laugh it off than scream it out. He nodded and promised me that the rest of the conference should go smoothly for me. He told me that I'd be mentioned in the opening lecture because of the exercise, but that it wouldn't revolve around me. He was right in one sense. I didn't have any problems. I attended lectures and workshops and seminars and thought I learned more this week than I did in my last semester at college. I made contacts and even a couple of friends, but Eve never showed up. I expected her to find me the first day. When she didn't, I went to dinner with a group of people to keep talking shop. The second day, I was so wrapped up that I barely noticed until dinner. I ate alone in a restaurant close to the hotel and wondered when she was going to pounce. It was the fourth day of the conference when I decided that she wasn't going to introduce herself. She knew who I was, had access to whatever materials Linda had, like high school yearbooks and the pictures my mother had strewn about the house. She knew what I looked like. I had no idea who she was or what she looked like other than her first name. I decided that there was really nothing that I could do about it, so I focused on the conference and soaked up what I could. I spent time in groups talking about the latest word, asked questions about the best way for me to get from where I was to the point where I could work in security instead of network administration, and got names of schools, suggestions of books, and promises for help along the way. The last day of the conference, I managed to say goodbye to most of the people that I'd met here. They'd accepted me as one of their own, or more to the point, like a little brother that they were teaching about life. I think they liked the idea of converting a sysadmin to their way of thinking. That night, I had 100 emails from people I'd met here to offer more advice or just to touch base. Eve had been silent all week. I decided to leave it alone. If she didn't want to talk, I wasn't forcing the issue. I did ask to be added to the mailing list for next year's conference and made plans to catch my flight the next day. I checked out and caught a shuttle to the airport, riding with a few people from the conference. We were still talking about hacking when we had to split up to get to our respective gates. We shook hands and promised to see each other next year. The flight home gave me a lot of time to think. I alternated between thinking about the conference, Eve, my job search, Mike and Mary, the kids, and a dozen other things. It was a long day, spent on planes. We flew to Dallas where I changed planes for the last leg of the trip, caught a quick bite while waiting for my boarding call, and turned on my phone briefly to check for missed calls. I called Mary back and told her not to pick me up. I'd get a cab from the airport since I was getting in late. I hadn't had any other messages that couldn't wait. My email was still lighting up from the conference, and I was getting a lot of leads on jobs now. I landed in Birmingham just after midnight, and after a stop at baggage claim, I was in a cab just before 1 a.m. I went home and checked on the kids briefly before I went to bed myself. I didn't hear from Eve that week, but I spent a lot of time following up on job offers. I finally decided on a network administration job for a company that did security consulting. I thought security was an increasingly interesting field. The only hitch was that the job was in LA. I'd be leaving the family again, and this time it was going to be long-term. I talked to Mike and Mary about my concerns, and they were supportive. It's not necessarily forever, Mike told me. Go out there, do the job for a couple of years, and then you'll have enough experience to find something closer to home, he said. Or you could find that LA is home after a few years out there. I nodded reluctantly. Are you guys going to be all right if I go? I asked, expressing my other concern. We're good, Mary told me. The house is nearly done and Mike can handle the rest himself. I don't want you to hold back because of us. I frowned at that. I don't want you to keep me in the dark if things aren't okay, I countered. I think Mike has learned his lesson, she said primly, patting his hand. With her back to work, the stress in their relationship had eased and they were back to the loving couple that they'd been before. I finally agreed, and the next day, I accepted the job. I talked to Rosa about it, and she was ecstatic that I was going to be working. LA was much farther away, so she wasn't thrilled about that, but she hoped that I'd be able to move somewhere closer once I'd been with the company for a while. I finally called Linda and told her that I was taking a job in LA. She was supportive, but then she brought up the subject that I'd known was coming. Eve said you haven't talked to her since the conference, she said gently. What's going on? She says that nothing happened, but I don't think she's telling me the whole story. She stood me up, I told her. I went to the conference on her invitation. It was a conference for cybersecurity, which is her specialty. I went there to see her. She never showed. I'd thought about what you said about her and I having a lot in common and decided to give it a chance. I'm not sure what happened on her end, but I was waiting for her to find me. I don't know much about her, but I know she's been keeping tabs on me for years. I figured that she'd find me at the conference and we'd see if we hit it off. Instead, I attended alone and she hasn't messaged me since to tell me what happened. Oh, she said quietly. She probably got cold feet, she said, trying to put the best face on it. That's what I figured, I said. It would have been nice to have a guide for the thing, but it's no big deal. I managed. If I can get her head on straight, would you talk to her? She asked. I never stopped talking to her, I said. After the conference, I figured she wasn't interested and I left it alone. I don't think it matters though. I'm moving to LA. I'm not going to be much closer to Denver than I am right now. She sighed. Just let me talk to her and see what she says. Not a problem, I told her. I don't see us getting together though. She seems to like to play games, and I'm not interested in getting jerked around. That seemed to upset her. Damn it. She swore softly. I'll straighten her out, Ham. She promised and we said goodbye. I was scheduled to start in 3 weeks, so I got myself ready and said goodbye to everyone before I got in my truck. I was driving so I could take a side trip to Austin on the way through. I hadn't told Rosa I was doing that. I wanted it to be a surprise. I drove straight through to Waco that first night. I could have made it to Rosa's driveway, but I wasn't dropping in on her that late and unannounced. The next morning, I checked out of the motel and drove down the road to Austin, pulling into her driveway just in time for breakfast. I rang the doorbell and a pretty young girl answered. I guess she was about 19 at a glance, but I didn't more than glance. Hi, I said. I'm looking for Mrs. Sanchez, I told her. Sorry, she doesn't rent to guys, she told me and started to close the door. I put my hand on the door to keep it open. Wait, I said. I know she doesn't rent to guys. I'm a friend. I'm passing through the area and wanted to see her. She looked worried when I put my hand on the door, but calmed down when I explained. Oh, she said. Okay, come on in. She's in the kitchen. I took off my shoes when she let me in, and she led the way inside. Mrs. S., she said, disappearing into the kitchen. There's a guy here to see you. Says he's a friend. They had a brief conversation as I set my shoes aside and started toward the kitchen. She came out into the hall, looking concerned about who would be calling so early, and her face lit up when she saw me. Ham, she screamed and wrapped her arms around me, hugging me like she hadn't seen me in years instead of the few months that it had been. When she was done with the hug, she pulled my face down and kissed me very thoroughly before hugging me again. By this point, we'd attracted a bit of an audience, and a couple of giggles alerted us that we were being watched. I was introduced all around to the 3 girls she had rooming with her. They seemed like nice girls, and I was glad that Rosa was sticking to her rule about only accepting girls. What are you doing here? She asked when she had me seated at the breakfast table. I noticed that the girls were helping out with breakfast a lot, and I was brought coffee and juice and toast while the rest of breakfast was prepared. It was nice, if a little overwhelming. I took that job in LA, I reminded her. I could have flown, but I decided to take my truck so I could stop in and see you. You came all this way to see me? She blurted. Austin's not on the way to LA. She had a hold on my arm and was drinking in the sight of me with a watery smile on her face. No, but the route would have taken me through Dallas. I'd have been ashamed of myself if I hadn't taken the time to stop in and spend some time with you. She smiled gratefully and I returned it, suddenly glad that I'd made this decision rather than fly. How long can you stay? She asked hopefully. I have some time, I assured her. I start work in just under 3 weeks. I have an apartment waiting for me out there, but I have to get some furniture and set up the place. She nodded. Stay a couple of days? She asked. Your apartment is just how you left it. Really? I asked, glancing at the backyard where the garage was. I figured one of the girls would have taken it over. Nope, she said. I always told them that was my son's place when he came to town. I smiled at that and gripped her hand. God, I've missed you, I told her affectionately. She blushed at that and gripped my hand too. Breakfast got served and I got to know the girls a little more. I found out that one of them was in computer sciences and told her about the difficulty I'd had in breaking into my field. I suggested she look into a career in security and told her about the conference I'd attended recently. After breakfast, Rosa asked me if I'd thought to bring my tools with me, and I asked what she needed done. She put me to work on some nagging repairs and kept me company, chatting while the girls studied or relaxed. So, still no Mrs. Ham? She asked, making me laugh out loud. Yeah, you're definitely my mother. No grandchildren yet, I told her, amused. I was sort of interested in someone for a while, but it didn't work out. She asked me about it and I told her about Eve and getting stood up at the conference. She shrugged. She'll realize that she let a good man get away, she said. Maybe she'll figure it out in time to catch up to you, or maybe she'll only realize it when it's too late. I shrugged as I stood on the ladder, repairing her gutters where they'd started to pull away from the roof. Maybe I'm not what she's looking for in a guy, I said lightly. Hell, she may be more attracted to girls and I was misled. I suppose that's possible, Rosie admitted. Is that a problem for you? Not really, I said lightly. I guess people should do what makes them happy. It would suck to find out from the person I was in love with that I was rejected on the basis of having the wrong parts for her, but at the same time, I'd have to deliver the same news if a guy told me he wanted me. She nodded. Well, I hope that's not the case, she said and stood, steadying the ladder and looking up at me as I made sure that everything was secure. That's how we spent the day, with her keeping me company while she had me handle a dozen little tasks that I wouldn't have wanted her looking after. She talked me into staying 2 nights so that we could go out dancing tomorrow night. I smiled, remembering the last time we went out dancing. So does that mean we're going to end up curled up together tomorrow night? I asked playfully. I remember how our last dancing date went. I'll try not to drink so much, she said with a chuckle. I'll try not to snore so much, I promised, and we both laughed. I don't have to use the apartment, you know, I pointed out. I think I might like having you here too much if you spent 2 nights with me, she countered. I looked at her and climbed back down. I had to move the ladder, but I also wanted to talk to her about this. I stand by my statement that I can't think of anyone I'd rather rediscover sex with, I told her. You still haven't gotten back in the saddle? She asked, surprised. Nope, I confirmed. I didn't stop looking, but it looks like LA is going to be home. Might have found someone in Birmingham if I'd been there long enough, but it is what it is. You promised you weren't going to stop trying, she chided me. And I haven't, I promised her. When I got back to Birmingham, my brother was in a bit of a jam. He bought a house, but it needed renovations before they could move in. With 2 babies, he couldn't move in until most of them were done. Money was tight, and he and his wife were starting to come unglued with worry. So I had to step up and get a lot of the work done while he was at work during the day. I started talking to the woman that invited me to the conference and thought that might be worthwhile, but she stood me up. Once I get out to LA, I'll get back to looking around. She nodded. So long as you haven't given up, she said, and we got back to work. In addition to the gutters, there was some siding that needed work, a leaky faucet in her bathroom, a stump I used my truck to pull out, a cracked pane in one of the basement windows, and a loose board on the basement stairs. None of it was anything major, but it was all little things I wouldn't have wanted her to handle on her own. We had dinner with the girls, and then they were off to some college function, and the 2 of us were on our own. She'd never answered my final word on spending the night with her, but instead, she got me the apartment key and patted my cheek fondly. If you left your door unlocked, one of the girls might sneak up to make sure you're tucked in properly, she teased me. Not you, though? I asked, teasing her back. Not me, she agreed. I nodded and then gave her a very tender hug before I went to get my travel bag and take it up to the apartment. I intended to do a load of laundry before I left again, but I'd do that tomorrow night before I left. I was told that breakfast would be served in the main kitchen, since there was only a few stray beers kicking around the fridge upstairs. I fixed the beer problem, recognizing the last 4 beers from the half case I'd brought home from work. That night, I'd left the door unlocked, but none of the girls were brave enough to creep up the stairs. I went to bed and slept like I was at home. Part of me thought that I really was. The next day, I spent some time with Lizzie, the girl who was going into computer sciences, and gave her a little of the mentoring that I wished I'd had at her age. I asked her how far she was planning on going and told her I had a master's and was having trouble finding work. I also told her to make contacts in her class and when she got out in the field. I found this job through talking to people at the conference. If you have the option to go to a thing like that, go. The people you meet can be a big help. You have to meet them though. She nodded and asked me if I'd recommend her for the conference next year. I'd really like to go and see what it's like. It sounds like it changed your life. It kind of did, I agreed. Give me your email and I'll keep you informed. I'll also send it off to the organizers. Be warned, they start the conference with a joke every year. They hack into the hotel and cancel one reservation. If you get there to check in and they tell you it's canceled, call the organizers right away. They've got a suite booked for you. They do that to demonstrate how important security is. I was last year's dupe, only no one had warned me. So I argued with the hotel staff for 3 hours before I got in touch with the coordinators to let them know. She laughed at that. That's terrible, but it's funny. I nodded. It helped demonstrate how quickly things get out of control when our computer systems are compromised. After lunch, I took Rosa shopping and I talked her into barbecue for supper. There was a restaurant I loved here in Austin, and I missed their stuff even though barbecue is stellar all over the South. We brought back a mess of Texas best, and the 5 of us made a mess of ourselves before I was sent off to get ready to take Rosa out dancing. Lizzie wanted to join us, but the other girls had a house party to go to that they were more interested in. The way they were dressed, I was kind of interested in going too, but I kept my eyes in my head and took Lizzie and Rosa dancing without a backwards glance. Rosa was in high spirits and I danced with both girls all night. I stuck to beer and Lizzie was too young to drink, so Rosa was the only one to get herself a little tipsy. True to her word, she kept her head this time, and I suspected that part of her drinking the last time was that she was sad to see me go. This time, she was more certain that I'd be back to visit, so she was more happy. We danced and talked and finally called it a night when the bar closed. We got home and I said goodnight to the girls, giving them each a hug before I retreated to the apartment. I didn't bother to lock the door again tonight and stripped down to nothing before I started the laundry I was planning. I waited until the washer was done and then transferred everything to the dryer and went to bed, not bothering with shorts. I'd get showered and dressed in the morning. If this were a Penthouse Letters entry, the girls would have come home from their house party tipsy, excited and adventurous, and would have climbed the stairs to tag team me until it was time for breakfast. I would have totally taken the opportunity, but I was the only person in the apartment when I woke. I got showered and then stripped the bed, putting the sheets in the washer while I got dressed and packed. I had time to put them in the dryer before I went down to breakfast with the ladies. I came up behind Rosa as she was working on breakfast and wrapped my arms around her, kissing her neck. I should have bet you money about leaving the door unlocked, I told her. She squirmed and shot me a look over her shoulder that only earned her a kiss on the lips before I retreated to get a cup of coffee. Well, that's not my fault, she said. I didn't discourage them from going up to cuddle with you. I guess I'm just too old to play horsey now. I teased her briefly. She laughed at that and sat me at the table. She had a waffle in front of me before I was there very long, and she put a bowl of fresh cut fruit beside it a moment later. She was amazing. You guys sure don't act like mother and son, Lizzie commented. She'd been sitting at the table with her own waffle when I came in, and she was nursing her coffee now. I didn't give birth to him, but I wish I had and I could call him mine, Rosa told her, smoothing my hair affectionately. I am yours, I told her. I told you that before. When I settle down and produce kids, they're gonna call you Grandma. She smiled. And I'm gonna tell them about what a bad dancer their papa was before I taught him to move, she threatened. That made Lizzie smile. Now you're acting like family, she said. I was starting to think that you two had a thing. I shook my head. Not for lack of trying, but my timing was lousy with her, and now she's trying to find me a nice girl to give her grandchildren. Huh. Rosa barked. I'm too young to be a grandmother, she argued. But it wasn't the first time we talked about her relationship with my kids, and this was the first time she protested. I smirked at her and shook my head. I'm not having them tomorrow, I told her dryly. You'll have plenty of advance notice before the big day. She gave me a withering look. You don't seem to be making much headway. I shrugged. Maybe not, I agreed. Or maybe Lizzie's going to meet me at the conference, sweep me off my feet, and make an honest man out of me. Me? She blurted. What? No, I never said, she sputtered, flustered by being drawn into the conversation. Relax, honey, I told her. No one's saying you were planning on stalking me, but if you were, that would be just super. I grinned and winked at her. She was a pretty girl and taking the same discipline I was. I liked her and I hoped she did well. I didn't seriously entertain any notions that she'd be attracted to me, but you never knew. I was a mentor and I read an awful lot of stories online that indulged that particular fantasy. Hey, I hadn't been late in 6 years. You thought I was resorting to cold showers and prayer to see me through? The three of us laughed a little, even though there was a nervous tinge to it. The other girls joined us at that point, and we changed the subject. I was getting on the road and I was looking to make some time today. I told them that I was hoping to make it to El Paso today, or maybe a little farther, and then stop somewhere west of Phoenix tomorrow, so I'd be in LA early enough to move some furniture into the apartment. All by yourself? Lizzie asked, surprised. That's kind of a shitty way to unwind after a long drive. I shrugged. Most of the people I went to school with out there are spread out across the country now, I said. I'll still have a couple of weeks before I have to report to work. That's enough time to relax. I need a bed as soon as I get to town, though. She nodded. The other girls seemed sympathetic, but not really concerned. They suggested IKEA furniture so it was easier to carry. I nodded and thought that might work for some things, but others, I didn't want to screw around with the endless parts and shitty instructions. I said goodbye to everyone and got some hugs from all the girls, which was literally the closest thing I'd had to sex since my brother ran the red light. The hug I got from Lizzie was one that I could easily have stayed in for a few days, but I wasn't sure if there was a hint of affection in it, or if she was just grateful that I'd given her some good advice, and the promise of getting her the details of the convention next year. Rosa took my face in her hands and looked into my eyes, smiling brightly. If you were just a little older, or I was just a little younger, she said again wistfully. She kissed my lips very gently and then hugged me like she was trying to make my eyes come out. I got my bag from where I dropped it by the back door, and then the girls followed me to the truck and saw me off before they went about whatever their day was going to consist of. I missed them already. I'd looked for work in Austin, but I wasn't getting anything that would even pay as well as construction, so I'd had to pass on that. I was amused for a good half hour of the drive when I realized that I essentially had 3 homes now. That was quite a change from the day that I'd seen Billy and Linda kiss, when I'd been without even one until Mike stepped in. I made it to a little roadside dive in New Mexico before I stopped for the night. I was about an hour closer to LA than I'd planned on getting, but that was because I enjoy driving. I stopped for lunch and gas and the restroom at the same time and didn't take long with any of them. I'd been keeping a cooler on the passenger seat and Rosa had packed it with sandwiches before I left. There was enough for me to eat all the way into LA, but I kept them for dinner rather than eat them on the road. It was almost like having another home-cooked meal with her, and I appreciated that. After I finished a couple of the sandwiches, I called her to thank her and let her know where I was. We chatted for a bit, and she said the girls said hi. I returned the greeting and she sounded a little smug about how well I'd gotten along with them. After I talked to her, I decided to update Mike and called him. He was glad to hear from me, and we talked for a while. So you and your old landlady hook up along the way? He asked, picking on me as was his place as my older brother. Nope, I said. She's looking to apply for the job of grandma when I settle down and decide to try fatherhood. I reminded him. I know someone in Denver that'll blow her cork if she hears that. He chuckled. She probably would, I agreed. But Rosa's been more of a mother to me than she has since I turned 18. Hell, Mary's more a mother to me. Sometimes we worry like parents, he laughed. You're doing okay though. How's the road treating you? Good, I told him, and we turned the conversation more toward the trip and my progress. After that, I turned in. I was just about asleep when my phone rang. That was never a good sign. I picked it up and answered it without looking at the display. Hello? I said, shaking off the sleep I just settled down to. Ham? Linda said. Did I catch you at a bad time? Not really, I told her. I'm just on my way to LA and I put in a long day on the road. What's on your mind? I just wanted to call and see how you were, she told me. I'm good. I stopped in Austin for a couple of days to see Rosa on the way through. It was good to stay in the old apartment for a couple of nights. That's nice, she said, and I could tell that she was smiling. So you're planning on being in LA in the next few days? I could probably make it tomorrow if I pushed, I told her. I'm not really interested in doing that though, so probably the day after tomorrow. I want to get into town early enough to buy the furniture I need right away. Yeah, I wouldn't want to drive all day and then have to move furniture, she admitted. So how have you been doing, other than the trip? Not bad. One of Rosa's new boarders is taking computer sciences, so I got to play mentor for a day. Other than that, Mike and Mary bought a house and I helped them get it ready for the kids when I was there. She made the appropriate sounds when I talked about the house and Rosa's new charges and the drive, but I could sense that she had something that she wanted to talk about. There was an expectant note in her voice as she responded, like she was waiting for me to broach the subject. There were only 2 subjects she'd want to talk about that she wouldn't start the conversation for. She was either eager to talk about Billy or Eve. I paused the conversation and finally asked. Okay, Linda, I said, prepared for what she might have in mind. Billy or Eve? I asked. She sighed. worried at how bluntly I brought it up. Eve, she admitted. She feels kind of shitty about the conference. I talked to her, and she got cold feet. No reason she should feel shitty about it, I said nonchalantly. I looked back at the emails and she never actually promised that she'd be there, or that she'd see me there. I assumed she wanted to meet and I was disappointed when she didn't come, but I got a lot out of the conference. I'm glad I went. She's toast, isn't she? She asked. I recognized that tone from the day you found out about me and Bill. I dunno, I said. I'm not pissed about it, but I definitely felt a little jerked around at the time. She really hasn't haunted my email since, and I just figured that she decided that I wasn't the kind of guy that she wanted to have around and backed out of the picture. It's not that, she said. I told you that Eve's mouth tends to get her in trouble. It's cost her some relationships with friends and family and even a guy or two. She's a little shy about new people because of it. She let her anxiety get the better of her and just couldn't find a way to talk to you afterwards. It's all good, I told her. She's still living in Denver? I asked. No, she's lived in LA since she got out of school, she said. I closed my eyes and suddenly wished I'd taken the job in Kandahar. So she was kicking around the conference and just avoided me? She's really shy, she said apologetically. She didn't mean to leave you hanging. I sighed. You told her about my history? I prompted her. Yeah, I thought it was best to warn her about anything she might say that could cause problems, she said. I know we talked about you doing that. I reminded her. We just never followed up on it. I never asked if you'd told her all of it. Yeah. I even told her about the Christmas presents, she admitted. Okay, I said. I'm cool with you telling her all that. I said that before, but it's worth repeating. With everything that's gone on, it's hard for me to put myself out there. What happened with you and Billy hurt me for a long time, and just when the clouds parted and I could feel the sun on my face, Sabrina was taken from me. It's terrifying to think of trying again, Linda. Those two experiences were so horrible that I'm more comfortable with the thought of growing old alone than putting my trust in someone else or my faith in some magical happy ending. Going to that conference was a huge leap for me. I get that it's scary, but it sounds like she's just not ready to take that leap. I appreciate you trying, but it's cool. That's what I'm trying to tell you. She said. She's ready now. She felt really bad about the conference and even worse when I told her that you'd had problems with the registration. She wants to meet you when you get to LA. I sighed wearily. What changed? I asked. The conference was 2 weeks ago, and she didn't want to talk. What's different now? You're moving out there, she said simply. Part of what scared her off before was the distance. She's a nice girl. She wasn't interested in being your girl for the length of the conference, and then being just another notch on your belt. That got me laughing. It was ludicrous and absurd and tragic all at the same time. It's not funny, Ham. She growled at me. Do you know how many women I've had sex with in my whole life? I asked her, finally getting myself under control. Well, I figured that there were girls out in LA, she said, taken aback. Billy told you there weren't, I said dryly. I figured out afterwards that he was so eager for me to confess to cheating on you, so that it would soften the blow when you two came out. Okay, so you're saying you didn't have a rebound girl? She asked. Nope. I was too hurt to let anyone in, I told her. So just me and Sabrina? She asked, surprised. Wrong again. The night of the accident, we were on our way home to spend the night for the first time. I have exactly 1 notch on that belt. Yes, I know it's pathetic. Her worrying that she was just going to be another stamp on my stud card is kind of funny, in light of the fact that she's probably had more partners than I have. I didn't know that, she said quietly. About you and Sabrina. I mean, why would you? I don't exactly advertise it, for good reason. She was quiet for a moment. That might have made a difference to her if I'd been able to tell her before the conference. Not a big deal, I said. I'm guessing that she knows, though. She at least hasn't been able to uncover any evidence that I've had a sex life, since I don't brag about any conquests, and there doesn't seem to be anyone capable of bragging about their time with me. Well, she'll probably be relieved that it was never going to be an issue, she said, or she'll feel like shit for conjuring problems out of smoke. I pointed out, telling her that might make her feel guilty for thinking about me like that all over again. She nodded. I suppose that's possible. You want me to keep it from her? She asked. Nah, I said. It'll come out sooner or later, or it won't matter either way. Does that mean you're willing to meet with her? She asked hopefully. Why not? I agreed. I personally thought I'd rather get a BJ from a piranha, but if this was what it took to get Linda to screw off about how shy her friend was, I'd sit in another restaurant and waste an afternoon in polite conversation. You don't sound very enthusiastic, she chided. I'm really not at this point, I told her. Every time we've looked like we might be inching toward being friendly, she sets off a smoke bomb and disappears like a movie villain. There was a couple of times that things got flirty on email and she vanished. Then the conference happened and now we're on attempt number 4. I didn't know she froze you out over the email chats, she admitted. Twice. Once when she first started talking to me, and once when she sent me a picture of a naughty schoolgirl costume and I asked if it was her in the picture. Oh, she said. Well, I'll talk to her tomorrow and call you back to let you know what's on her mind. Okay, I said. I'll be on the road most of the day, but the truck picks up the phone. I'll call you in the afternoon then, once I've straightened her out. Sounds good, I said, and we said goodnight. I laid down again and suddenly I wasn't looking forward to getting into Ellen. It was the one place that none of this shit had ever followed me, and now Linda's personal information broker was waiting for me with a brand new enthusiasm for moving forward. I finally tripped and fell into sleep accidentally, having bizarre dreams where a faceless woman pushed me around a map of the US, moving me from city to city until I was staggering with each shove. Or another one where everyone around me was laughing at me while I smashed computers to try to protect myself. I had a strange dream where I was hanging sheetrock on the side of my truck, while Rosa told me that I'd never find the bottle I was missing until my reservation was straightened out. On and on they went, jumbling things from the past several years. Larry offered me a box of rattlesnakes if I promised not to let the computers find where he'd put his power saw. My father told me that I needed to man up and buy a house. Sabrina's parents asked when I was going to make them grandparents. Mike and I sealed Billy in the walls of his new house. By the time dawn broke, I was awake and ready to hit the road. I packed up my cooler, got a shower and changed, and then I checked out and hit the road. At least I didn't have to worry about the sun in my eyes until much later in the day. The sun wasn't the only thing I was dreading the afternoon for. I took a deep breath as I thought about the impending call from Linda. Well, Sabrina, I said softly, you wanted me to persevere. Here we go. Linda called just as I was pulling off the road to get gas. I hadn't made good time and was just getting into California. I figured I had another hour or 3 still left before getting off the road became urgent. Hi, Linda, I said, answering the phone. How's your day been? Mine's been okay, she said. How's yours been? Good. I'm not making great time, but I'm into California now, so I'll keep on the road for another hour or 2 and then find a place to stop. Well, don't overdo it, she cautioned me. So, let's talk about Eve. Good talk or bad talk? I asked lightly. Good mostly, she said hopefully. Okay, I said. How'd your talk go? Well, she does feel bad for thinking that you'd use her. She knew you weren't that kind of guy from things I've told her and what she could gather online. She doesn't feel guilty really, more embarrassed that she thought that way. Understandable, I said. If there's someone more laughable in the role of a remorseless womanizer, I can't think of who it might be. Maybe your nephew? She asked teasingly. Are you kidding? He's been fresh with his mother, his sister, half the kids in his daycare, and a couple of the teachers too. She laughed. I'll bet he's real cute, she said. I haven't heard complaints from the ladies yet, I told her. In any case, we're getting distracted. Eve's kind of a basket case right now. Embarrassment put her into a tailspin? I asked, knowingly. A little bit, she admitted. Tell her not to worry about it, I advised her. That kind of thing really does happen. She works in security. She knows to protect herself. I'll tell her you said that, she said. She'll be grateful that you understand. Well, I don't want her to freak out more than she already has, I told her. Still willing to meet her? She asked. I thought about that for a moment. Yeah, I said. I'm done with doing things online though. It's fine to use email and text to arrange for lunch or dates, but she'd been using it as a shield to keep me at arm's length. If she needs to do that, then I don't feel like I'd be doing either of us any favors by playing along, you know? Yeah, Eve's always been like this. Stepping out from behind the computer is probably scaring her too. Linda, I haven't tried to pry into what you can tell me about her, I reminded her. I'm essentially being set up on a blind date with someone that I know absolutely nothing about. On the flip side of the card, she's essentially been stalking me for you for 2 years. I get that she's got a bad case of the nerves, but she's got every advantage here. Maybe that's part of the problem, Linda suggested. She does hold all the cards. If you met, it would put you on even footing with her, and she's not used to not being in charge. Well, I'll agree to meet her, but you're not painting a picture of a woman that's ready for a relationship, Linda. Just be patient, she begged. You were always pretty popular through school. She wasn't. High school wasn't kind to all of us. Oh, Jesus. I breathed. So you're saying she's one of the walking wounded? I asked. I'm just telling you that her bluntness has cost her in the past. I blew out my breath. All right, so what's the bottom line? I asked. She's going to email you tonight and arrange to meet you, she said. If that goes well, then the two of you can start arranging other meetings. I didn't voice the opinion that I didn't think our first meeting was going to go well. Instead, I told her I'd let her know how it went after the fact. We chatted a little more, and then she let me go. I filled up the truck and got back on the road, with a shake of my head. I finally stopped in Banning, which was in commuting distance of LA, and crashed for the night. With some reluctance, I pulled out my laptop and checked my mail. There was a note from her telling me that she'd like to meet me. She left a restaurant and a time, and told me that the reservation was in my name. I replied that I was looking forward to it, even though I had visions of awkward conversation where she knew everything about me already and continued to reveal nothing to me. At least I'd be able to match a face to the yanking of my chain. I turned in and was up early and out the door. I got my apartment squared away. I had a bed and a dinette set by mid-afternoon. I'd sprung for a king-sized bed since I was increasingly convinced I'd be here for a few years at least. I'd managed to spend a couple of hours getting a lot of the things I'd need and knew I'd only scratched the surface. I ran the new dishes through the new dishwasher, grateful for its presence, and put away groceries before I decided to shower and change. I ended up having to use a t-shirt as a towel, having forgotten to pick some up today. At least I thought to get sheets, I muttered to myself. I got myself ready and knew I was an hour early. I started making a list of things I needed to get to make the apartment livable and comfortable. I didn't need much, but it was a pain in the butt not to have what I needed. I left the task for now and arrived at the restaurant well ahead of the reservation time. In spite of my misgivings, I was nervous about tonight. I knew that Eve knew my backstory, and just about anything there was to find out about me from the internet. So she probably knew what stories I read, what adult movie I preferred for everyday use, and which kinks I peeked at when I wanted something special. She probably kept better track of my online purchases, and with online banking, probably knew what I spent money on in the real world too. I checked my email on my phone to see if she'd messaged me and saw nothing. So I relaxed a little and tried to assure myself that meant that she was on time. I sat at my table, with my back to the door, sipping at my water glass and wondering what she'd look like, how we'd get along, and a dozen little nagging concerns like that. I checked my phone again and glanced toward the front of the restaurant, wondering where she was. I was twisted around to look, and there didn't seem to be any activity at the door. So I relaxed into my seat, taking another sip of my water. I started working on my list of needs for the apartment while I waited for Eve. I wasn't sure how long I waited there, but when my phone chirped with an incoming email, I opened it immediately. It consisted of 2 words, "I'm sorry." I stared at the email for a good 5 minutes before I put my phone away and decided that I was here and I needed to eat anyway, so I ordered. I ate slowly, the pressure having been settled by her email. I wasn't going to have to make awkward conversation. I wasn't going to have to wonder how much of my life she'd crawled into, and I wasn't going to have to worry about whether she'd like me or not. I enjoyed dinner and paid the bill before leaving the restaurant. I decided to reply to the email and pulled out my phone again. It's okay. I guess it just wasn't meant to be. Take care of yourself, Eve. I looked at the message for a moment and then added a thanks for recommending the restaurant, told her I'd enjoyed my dinner, and promised to return the favor if I encountered any places to eat that were worth mentioning. I turned off my phone and went to get in my truck. I sat in the parking lot for a moment and then got underway. I decided not to make the day a total waste and found a Target to pick up towels and other things I'd need for the house. My phone rang, and I checked the display before answering it. "Hi, Linda," I said as I pushed my cart around the housewares section of Target, picking out new towels to stock my bathroom. "She called me a little while ago," she said without any preamble. "Are you okay? What did she tell you?" I asked, ignoring her question for the moment. "That she'd been fine until she got to the restaurant and saw you sitting at the table waiting for her," she supplied readily. "I see," I said, finding a style of towel that I liked and getting enough of them in sizes ranging from washcloths up to bath sheets so that I'd be able to take showers for a couple of weeks before I'd run short. I anticipated having company occasionally. Well, I guess that's twice that the sight of me has made her reconsider. "Sorry it didn't work out. I know you had high hopes that we'd hit it off. You're pissed, aren't you?" she asked, and I could hear the cringe in her voice. "A little," I admitted. "Not at you, though. I had 100 things I could have been doing. I put them all on hold to get myself presentable for dinner with her. Beyond that, you put in a lot of time and effort to convince both of us to give it a try." "Yeah," she agreed. "I really wanted you guys to work out. Was there a part of you that was hoping that us getting together would help fix things between you, me, and Billy?" I asked directly. I wasn't angry about that. She'd been hoping to find some way to bring us all back together since she'd shown up in Austin. Maybe a little, but please don't be mad. I really did mean it when I said that you and Eve had a lot in common. "I know you did," I assured her. "I'm not mad. I'd have been surprised if you hadn't been thinking that me dating Eve would give you a chance to bring us all closer together." You did offer to name your daughter Sabrina. After all, she sighed. So now what are you gonna do? She asked. Move on, I said simply. After she sent me a 2-word apology, I ate dinner, thanked her for recommending the restaurant, and then went back to the task of setting up my apartment. I should have put her off so I could get things set up, but I figured that if she could fight her anxieties to make a date, I wouldn't cut her legs out from under her by asking to reschedule. Yeah, that was a nice thing to do, she said, regretful that things had gone so terribly. It's not the end of the world, I told her. I lost a couple of hours that I could have used to make the apartment more comfortable. No big deal. It's not like I need to report for work tomorrow. I'll get by. Thanks for trying, but you can't make it work sometimes, no matter how hard you try. I know, she said. I just hoped that I'd put you in touch with someone that could be a good partner for you. I appreciate it, Linda. I really do, I told her. From what I've seen, Eve isn't capable of being a good partner to anyone in her current state. She should probably see a counselor for her issues. You really think it's that bad? She asked, surprised. It doesn't have to be bad to talk to someone about your problems, I told her. After what happened with you and Billy, I saw someone for a long time. Rage eats at you when you really can't act on it, I informed her. I didn't know that, she said. Mike's idea, I supplied. He wanted me to talk to someone after everything that happened. Eve might be able to get some use out of talking to someone. At worst, it's someone that she can talk to, and she seems to have problems with face-to-face discussions. That alone can be worth the effort. At its most effective, she might get a hand tackling some of her issues. She really does like you, she said sheepishly. She read your reply and now she's worked herself up into a panic attack, knowing that she screwed it all up. She doesn't like me. I chuckled at the thought. She doesn't know me well enough to like me. She might like what she's been able to find out about me, but she's never even gotten so personal as to talk to me on the phone. You're not going to give her another shot, are you? She asked. I don't think she wants one, even if I were willing, I told her frankly and then paused. I was wandering through the appliance section, having found all the towels I wanted. I'm going to take a minute to be as blunt as you say she is. I got on a plane and flew halfway across the country to meet this girl with no expectations beyond a handshake and buying her dinner to get to know her as a person. I wasn't expecting sex or even a kiss goodnight. I came because I'd enjoyed the conversations we'd had until she flaked out. Instead of saying hi, she stood me up. I did the same thing tonight and the results were the same. I paused and bought myself a new waffle maker while I held the phone against my ear with my shoulder awkwardly. I've never given her the slightest reason to fear me or to think that I hated her, but tonight, I got the same bullshit that she's been stringing me along with. She's not trying. She's just screwing around and making me jump through hoops. It's the kind of high school bullshit that insecure girls pull. We're all supposed to be more grown up than that. Okay, she said when I talked myself out. I get what you're saying and I'm not going to try talking you out of it, I promise. Just tell me what you'd like me to tell her if she asks for another shot. Send her to me, I suggested. You've been in the middle long enough, and I know you wanted to be there to try to help us find each other. But now that it's turned sour, it's time for you to adopt an attitude of every man for himself. This isn't gonna be pretty, she predicted. Maybe not, but I don't intend to get nasty, I promised. I'll tell her that I've tried twice online to keep things going and twice in person to get things started, and I'm not interested in trying again. You don't need to relay messages anymore. You're in a tight spot. She's your friend and you want to help her, but you've been working hard to cultivate a friendship with me, and you've been trying to fix this whole mess by yourself. You've been helping, she said and sounded grateful. If you hadn't been willing to come halfway, then you never would have agreed to meet her tonight. Thanks for that, I said sincerely, adding a toaster oven to my cart. The last couple of days, I kind of got the impression that I caused you a lot of headaches. Not so much, she assured me. Sure, I've gotten some while we were on the phone together, but that's different. I suppose, I conceded. In any case, take care of you first. If she sounds like she's gonna blow, send her to me. I'll tell her myself. Okay, she said. Thanks, Ham. I have been trying hard to be a friend to you. It feels good to hear that you notice and appreciate it. I do appreciate it, I told her. Since you came to visit in Austin, you've stayed in touch and tried to help me out. I'd be sincerely shocked if it hasn't caused a little friction with Billy, and I'm making an effort not to make things worse for you in that respect. She was quiet for a minute and then sighed. He hasn't been happy that I'm talking to you, she admitted. He's probably worried, I told her. Why? Because when this all started, you told me that you fell in love with him because the conversations were so much more comfortable with him and that the two of you fit together so much better. Now you both have jobs and a baby on the way and concerns and bills and a dozen other problems that couples seem to have. He's probably scared out of his mind that our conversations are more relaxing and satisfying now that there's no heat in them. We don't have to talk about house repairs or car payments. We just talk about personal stuff. Oh, she said, getting what I was saying. It's not like that though. I've been trying to get you together with Eve. I know, but he probably wonders if I'm going to try to get back at him by trying to seduce you. No offense, Ham, but that's never going to happen, she said gently. I agree, I told her. I wasn't telling you what my endgame is. I was just pointing out that he has a legitimate reason to fear that I might try out of spite. He doesn't know me. After all, the last time he was in a room with me, he was telling me that he'd done the same thing to me. It's only natural that he'd wonder if I was itching for payback. What would you like me to tell him if he brings it up? She asked. Tell him that taking you away from me is the least of my problems with him, and if I was looking for revenge, I wouldn't get it by screwing his wife, I said. I was feeling blunt tonight. I wrestled a microwave into the cart and then remembered that I needed a coffee maker. She laughed a little at that, and I thought there was an edge of nervousness to her voice. I'm afraid to ask what you would do for revenge, she said. At this point, nothing. I'm not interested in getting back at him for any of it. It happened. He was involved. I've recovered from what happened with you. I'm over what happened at work. I still miss Sabrina, but I know he wasn't out to hurt anyone that night. I mostly just don't trust him to be part of my life. He might not mean it, but somehow, he manages to ruin my life every time he touches it. I don't go back to Denver and I can't see him traveling with his job much, so I'm in pretty good shape to stay away from him. I found the coffee maker I wanted and added it to the cart. I was done shopping for the most part, but there was no way I was going to the checkouts and juggling appliances while I was on the phone. I suppose that's an improvement from wanting to kill him, she said. Anything start that change, or just time? Mostly time, I said. I kind of made a commitment to let go of Sabrina, I said, my voice barely hitching when I said that, but I can't hold on to the hate for him and claim that I'm putting it behind me, right? I suppose not, she admitted. It still hurts, huh? It always will, but it doesn't have to cripple me forever. I was really hoping that Eve could help you soothe that pain, she said regretfully. It's okay. She has pain of her own to cope with, I said. I should probably go though. I'm wandering around Target picking up things for the new place. Okay, she said. Keep in touch? I will, I told her. Take care, and I'll talk to you later. We hung up and I got out of there and back to my apartment. Life went on like that for several months. I'd occasionally send Eve a restaurant suggestion, but I never shared anything personal and I never heard back, so I stopped doing it. I talked to Mike and Mary once a week, Rosa on the same schedule, and I'd chat with Linda once a month. I went out on a few dates, but nothing that felt good enough to repeat. I know what you're thinking. No, I wasn't sabotaging them just because they weren't Sabrina. My first date was someone a coworker set me up with. She was perfect, according to her. She was divorced, 30, one child, pretty, professional, and a dear friend. By far, it was the worst date I've ever been on. I picked her up on time, but had to wait while she was getting ready. We were an hour late for dinner, and she bitched about her husband, his 304 of a secretary, how he was behind on child support, how demanding her job as assistant curator of an art gallery was, and didn't seem to approve of much of anything. I listened, hoping that she'd wind down at some point, and recognized some of my own anger after Linda and Billy came out in the things she was saying. We were in the middle of dessert when she finally asked me about myself. I took the opportunity and started talking about growing up in Denver, going to college out here, and then moving to Birmingham and working in Austin before accepting the job in LA. I glossed over the reasons I moved to Birmingham, but gave her what I thought was a pleasant rundown of what life had been like in Alabama and Texas. She tried to stay with the conversation, but I could see that she was just nodding her head while she checked out of the conversation, so I let the topic die. I asked about her daughter politely and she talked about her some, but that led back to a rant about the child support that her husband, and that somehow merged into a discussion I didn't want to have where I heard all about his performance in the bedroom. By the end of dinner, I was praying for a call from someone, anyone, to get me out of this date. It wasn't meant to be. I was forced to suffer through her anger as she talked through the play we went to see after dinner. I kept a wooden smile on my face through it all. I don't know how. I just thought that I was inching closer to the end of the night, and then I could flee with my dignity intact. So, no girlfriends of your own to complain about? She asked finally. Typical. Marge would set me up with a virgin. Her disgust had started to ooze through the pores of her mask after the wine we'd had with dinner. I limited myself to a glass, but she'd had a few and was rapidly getting out of control of her temper. My last relationship didn't end so well, I said delicately, thinking it might put a damper on the night. She left you. Huh? Was it because of something bigger, Like her career or something else? She asked, her expression suggesting she thought she could read between the lines of life struggles. I decided to be straightforward, like Eve might have been. We were in a car crash. An idiot ran a red light and crashed into our car. She survived long enough to apologize for leaving me to figure things out on my own, and then she passed away while I screamed for help, trapped in the car with her. I said it plainly, staring at her and challenging her to make any lighthearted or cynical comment about it. The blood drained out of her face, and she looked shocked. Most people did when they found out. At least it sobered her up and shut her mouth. After the play, I took her home and walked her to her door. I thanked her for the lovely evening and then shook her hand before she let herself in. She was shaken, and the handshake told her that I had no interest in a second date. I avoided talking to anyone at work for a few days until her friend cornered me and asked me about it. She didn't tell you? I asked, surprised. Just that she wasn't sure when she'd see you again, she said. How did it go? I sighed. It was awful, I admitted. She went on about her ex-husband all night. I know exactly how much he owes her in child support, how tight-fisted he is, how unpleasant his secretary is, how much he annoys her with his habits, and how frustrating he can be in general. She talked about herself the entire time, barely engaging when I spoke. As the evening went on and the wine took effect, she became more bitter. Poor Marge grew more uncomfortable with each passing moment. She looked horrified, pressing her hands over her mouth in shock that things had gotten so out of hand. She didn't tell me any of that. Marge gasped. I'm so sorry. I thought she was over the divorce by now. It's been 3 years. I shrugged. People heal differently. I gave her a bit of an attitude adjustment toward the end of the night, and she got quiet until I dropped her off. I was tempted to bail on her, but she'd been drinking and I had no idea if she had money for a cab, so I stuck it out. Don't worry about it, but I'm not going out with her again. I'd rather be a practice dummy for dental school. She winced at that and apologized again. A few days later, she gave me a funny look and I asked her what was up. Did you really tell her that your last girlfriend had died? She asked quietly. I nodded. It happened in Denver just before I left town, I told her. So it's true? She asked, surprised. I motioned her to follow me and returned to my desk. I quickly went to the Denver Post website and brought up the newspaper articles for the accident and then her obituary. I didn't tell her, but my brother was driving the truck that hit us, I said. Next summer, it'll be 3 years since she died. She looked at the article and the picture of the crash that appeared with it. She shook her head and then switched back to the picture of Sabrina that was included in her obituary. She was beautiful, she commented, right down to her heart. I agreed, and there was only the barest twinge of sorrow. Mostly, I remembered her with fondness and affection. Your friend's pretty bitter, I told her. She should probably get some help before she tries to date again. She's still bitter about her divorce to the point where it's poisoned any hope that I'd ever go out with her again. If she's gonna get over it, she'll probably need a hand clearing the hurdles. She nodded and then closed the browser showing the crash and Sabrina's memorial. That was the last time she ever set me up on a date, but she did tell me that her friend had started therapy and was dating. I didn't really care if she dated, but the therapy was my good deed for the public that she might have come into contact with. None of my other dates were much better, but there were a few that were pleasant enough to become friends as they moved on, looking for a spark that we hadn't captured. This year, I decided to stay in LA for Christmas. I told Mike and Rosa both that I didn't have much time off for the holidays, so I was staying put and giving up the time off so that people with kids could spend the day with family. It wasn't the selfless gesture you think. I got paid extra for it, and I really didn't have enough time off to fly across the country for the sake of a couple of days with Mike and Mary. I worked through Christmas and had New Year's off. I still wasn't drinking anything strong, but I had a party to go to, and I could be designated driver if necessary. The party was thrown by Marge and her husband, and I was introduced around to several of their friends. My disastrous date was there with a well-dressed older gentleman, and she gave me an awkward smile, but made no effort to speak to me. I thought that was for the best. I had no desire to get into the middle of an apology for our one horrific date. We celebrated the countdown, and the party broke up around 2. I drove a few couples home, and then was on my way back from dropping off the last of my passengers when it happened. They say that your life flashes before your eyes, but all that happened for me was that time seemed to slow down. I'd caught the flash of lights to my left and looked up as the sound of sirens registered on my ears. I saw the SUV speed toward the intersection, straight at me, police in pursuit. Sabrina, I whispered, and then there was nothing. Thud, thud. My eyes hurt. I had them closed, but they still hurt. The light around me was so bright that it pressed in through the lids, and all I could see was the red haze of blood vessels in my eyelids. I was laying down and the only sound was the sound of the thudding, but it was getting slower. It sounded like something I should recognize, but I wasn't up to thinking. This was pleasant, wherever it was. Even with the bright light, I was laying on something comfortable and I felt calm, relaxed, at peace. I hadn't felt like this in a long time. The last time was with Sabrina. I shouted and sat up, my eyes flying open. I was suddenly confused. I was behind the wheel of my truck. Hadn't I just been lying on something? I looked around and I saw an SUV. Its front bumper was just touching my door, but it seemed to have stopped. I looked at the driver. She looked scared. She was crying and her eyes were wide, staring into mine in horror. I wondered who she was. She looked pretty and young, but a little ragged around the edges, like she'd been partying hard. Her hair was a bit tangled and her makeup was highlighting the tear tracks as much as her eyes. I studied her face for a few minutes and thought about what to do. She seemed frozen as much as her car was. I was curious, but not alarmed, really. I looked around and Sabrina was sitting in the passenger seat, watching me. Sabrina, I whispered. She smiled at me and took my hand. Hey you. She grinned. Her voice filled with amusement. It sounded like music to me. Am I dead? I asked. Do you feel dead? She asked, answering me with her own question. How would I know what being dead felt like? I asked, smiling myself. We'd sometimes play this game, asking questions until we couldn't think of a way to avoid answering. How would you know what feeling alive felt like? She asked with an arched eyebrow. That's a low blow, I said to her, abandoning the game. I've been trying. Bringing me up on your first date was trying? She asked dryly. Are you shitting me? I asked. You saw that date. That was bullshit. She went out to dinner with me and ranted about her husband all night. Okay, fair enough, she admitted. You're still not making any headway. I tell you that I'm not coming back until you have good news and you pull a stunt like this. She gestured toward the SUV that was about to slam into my door, just like Billy had done to her years ago. Yeah, because I drive around LA trying to put myself in front of a high-speed chase, I said sarcastically. I had my police radio around here somewhere. I must have dropped it in my excitement to find someone running from the cops. You think I did this on purpose? The only reason I'm on this road is because I was driving people home after a party. FYI, I went to the party and talked to people. Last time you were here, you bitched me out for not moving on and now you're here because I'm not moving fast enough? I was starting to get angry. And what happened to not coming back until I meet someone? You don't want anything to do with me, then stop complaining about what I do with my life while you're gone. She looked at me for a long time and nodded. That's more like it, she said, sounding satisfied that I was getting angry at her. You've had me on a pedestal for a long time, she pointed out. Now that you can get angry at me, you're in a better place. What? What are you talking about? I blurted. I'm about to be turned into hamburger. I pointed to the SUV. I'm a permanent resident now, same as you. Are you? She asked, giving me the look that said I was dense. When did you become a doctor? It doesn't take a medical degree to figure out that I'm screwed once things start moving, I pointed out to her. She shrugged. Tell me about the safety rating on the truck, she demanded. It's got a good rating, I admitted, but it's not capable of standing up to being rammed like this. Maybe not, she said. You think you're going to die? She asked. Yeah, I said, looking at the SUV. I think she's going to cave in my door as far as the center console and my seatbelt is going to cut me in half. She laughed at that. I guess we'll see, won't we? She asked, and when I turned back, she was gone. That's when things started moving again. Airbags deployed. Metal screamed on metal. The windows blew out as the frames crumpled. Pain shot through the left side of my body as the door buckled in and slammed into me. I couldn't make sense of anything. The truck spun, slamming into the building on the corner. I was conscious, but floating, still unable to ground myself in anything that had happened. Sabrina, I whispered, blood bubbling over my lips, and then the world went dark for me. I didn't die, though. This is not the memoir of a dead man. That's a catchy title, though. If I could write worth shit, I'd make something out of it. I opened my eye for the first time on January 7th. I was groggy and it didn't stay open very long, but I knew I was in hell when the first person I saw was Billy. I closed my eye and dove back into unconsciousness, gratefully. The next day, I woke up enough for a doctor to go over my injuries with me. Well, I'd give you the list of your broken bones, but it's easier to just inform you that you broke your left everything. Your arm, your leg, your hip, pelvis, several ribs, clavicle, your jaw. You turned your whole left side into a jigsaw puzzle. You had 9 teeth knocked out, your left eye is healing nicely, but you had a piece of glass cut it up some. That's why we have a patch over it for now. It'll be fine. You've had some internal bleeding, and we had you in an induced coma while the swelling in your brain went down. You had the mother of all concussions." He patted my right shoulder, which seemed to have survived the crash. I tried to ask what had happened, and he shook his head. "Don't try to talk, son," he told me. "Just concentrate on getting better. You've had some visitors over the past few days, and they'll want to talk to you. But for now, just rest." I held up my right hand and made motions like writing. He nodded. "We'll get you something to write with," he promised, and then he left. I drifted in and out of consciousness over the next few days. Fortunately, Billy was never there when I was awake, but other people were. Rosa had nearly been frantic and had driven down to see me. She'd been the first to arrive, so I was told. She said Lizzie was worried, but couldn't leave school to visit. I wrote, "Good girl," on the pad I'd been using to communicate with people. I told her that I was happy to see her, and she wept. "I couldn't stay away when you needed me," she said. "I hope you don't mind that I'm staying at your apartment." "I wouldn't want it any other way," I wrote quickly. "We're all crowded in there," she confessed. "It's a little tight, but no one wants to leave." "Who? How many?" "Well, there's me and Linda and her husband and daughter, your brother Mike and his family and your mother," she told me. I gaped at her with my good eye. "How?" I wrote. "My apartment was only a 2-bedroom. I'd put a king-size bed in each room in case I had company, but there was one bathroom. It wasn't equipped for 6 adults and 3 kids." She chuckled. "We're making it work," she promised. "No one gets to sleep in, and we share the bathroom. The couch is a pull-out, thank God, or some of us would be curled up in chairs." I thought about that. "People need to start getting back to work," I wrote. "I'm glad that everyone wanted to be here, but they need to pay bills." I underscored that point with a single word. "Worried." I wrote and underlined it hard. She nodded. "Mike and Mary are leaving tomorrow," she said. "Their kids really are beautiful. Petey looks a little like you." That made me smile as much as I could, under the circumstances. She left me after that, and I got a visit from my mother. "Hi, Petey," she said, looking like she wanted to cry. "Are you in any pain?" "Not right now," I wrote. "It's been a long time." "Too long," she said. "I didn't know if you'd be happy I was here, but when I heard that you'd been hurt, I had to come." "It's okay. I'm glad you came." It wasn't exactly true, but I was glad that most of the family was together for a little while and that they were getting along. "Dad didn't?" "Your father wanted to, but with everyone else coming, he had to take care of the houses. He'll come down to see you when we go back." I nodded. It sounded like everyone was reconciled. "Sorry things are cramped. I didn't figure on having this much company." "It's okay. I've had a chance to get to know Mrs. Sanchez the past week. She's very fond of you. When it looked like they might have to take one of your kidneys, she was the first to ask to donate one." That surprised me. "Kidney?" I wrote, alarmed. "It was damaged in the crash, but they saved it. She and I talked a lot after that, and she told me that she thinks of you like a son." "I think of her like a mother," I wrote before adding, "no offense." She shook her head. "We've drifted apart since this all started," she admitted. "I haven't been able to be part of your life, and that hurts. But I'm glad that you had that from someone, even if I wish it could have been me. I never stopped loving you, Peter." "I know," I wrote and then scribbled underneath that. "I never stopped loving you either. You chose sides and that hurt. It wrenched everything apart, and there was no stopping that. But I understood that you didn't have a choice. You had to support him. He was still in high school. I was in college on my own and barely home anymore. You chose the side where you were needed." She nodded. "I felt you slipping away, and I knew that I couldn't do anything to stop it. You were so angry all the time, and we were like the enemy to you." I nodded a very small amount. It hurt to move my head a lot, so I didn't like to do it, but it seemed like the safest response. "I was angry all the time," I wrote. "He hadn't just stolen my girlfriend. He'd done it a year ago, and they hadn't told me. I could have met someone in LA if they told me right away, and that made me mad too." She nodded. "None of us were happy about how they handled it, but it's a long time ago, and Linda says that you're making progress toward letting it go." "Yeah, I'm not angry anymore. Not about that, or the accident at work, or even about Sabrina. It happened and it sucks, but it doesn't hurt and I don't hate." She nodded and told me she was glad. "I've worried that you were going to live with hate in your heart forever." "I needed time," I wrote. "Dad wouldn't let it go that day. I couldn't handle being there. If I'd stayed, I probably would have done worse." She nodded. "I know. Your father knows too, deep down. He's been very worried about you the past couple of years. He doesn't always show it, but he worries. He was worried that day too," she told me. "He was trying to prevent this. You and your brother haven't spoken in years. He was afraid that this would happen." I shrugged my right shoulder. My left was immobilized, So that was the extent of my reaction. She patted my arm. Just give him a chance when he comes to see you, she asked gently, and then she left. Mike and Mary came in with the kids as soon as she was gone. You gave us a hell of a scare, Mike told me as soon as the door closed. How do you feel? Sorry, I wrote. Didn't want to worry everyone. I'm okay. Whatever they have me on for painkillers, it's working. He nodded. That was a scary night. Sabrina woke up screaming for you. We were trying to get her to calm down and go back to sleep when the phone rang. At 4 in the morning, it's never good news. It took us a few days to find a flight, but as soon as we got here and Sabrina saw you, she calmed down. It was like she knew. He was holding her, and she looked at me, reaching out for me with both her tiny hands. I beckoned him closer and let him put her down on the bed with me, so I could snuggle with her one-armed for a few minutes. She made herself right at home, and my heart melted for her. Mike and Mary talked with me for a little while, and Petey took Sabrina's place after a while. I couldn't really respond to them while I was holding the kids, but they just let me know what was going on. I knew they were leaving the next day, so that was no surprise. What was a surprise was that they'd worked it out, so that someone was hanging around for the next few weeks to keep an eye out for my interests. I made a curious sound and managed to push the word, who, out between my tightly clamped teeth. Rosa and Mom are taking turns, though everyone wanted to stick around. Now that you're awake, we're gonna back off and let you recover before we mob you. Carl and Hope Pierce wanted to be here too, but we convinced them to wait. Mike and Mary kept in close contact with them for the kids. Once most everyone else clears out, they'll be down to see you. I nodded awkwardly, and Mary took Petey out of my hands so I could write. I'll be happy to see them. How's the family reunion at my place been? I smirked a little at that. It's been weird, but it's good for the kids to meet their cousin Petra, he told me. I looked at him strangely. Yeah, they named their daughter after you. You objected to Sabrina, so that was their solution. You'll be meeting her shortly. You gonna be okay with that? You're not gonna jump out of a bed and club her daddy with one of your casts, are you? I chuckled about that and paid for it with a surge of agony from my entire body. I'll be okay, I wrote. The first time I woke up, Billy was here. I suppose this is an opportunity for him to talk to me as a captive audience. Mary read that and snorted. If he gets out of line, hit the call button and we'll be in to get him, she told me. I smiled at her. I love you guys, I wrote. I'm glad you're going home though. I'm already worried about the house and bills. Not a problem, Mary assured me. We haven't had problems since I went back to work. We have money in our retirement accounts. We're ahead on bills and we're going to stay that way. I nodded and told them that was a relief. They told me I had a few more visitors and then they were going to let me rest and come see me again in the morning before they went to the airport. I steeled myself for this next meeting. Linda led the way by herself. She came to sit with me and looked at me with a sad smile. You look like shit, she told me apologetically. Thanks, I wrote. Billy and the baby waiting outside until you figure out whether my cast is loaded? I asked. She barked a laugh about that. I wanted to see how you were feeling before I sprang them on you, she admitted. I nodded a little. It's okay. If I get agitated, I'll let you know, I promised. She nodded and went to the door, letting Billy in with their daughter. He looked at me very tentatively. Hi, Pete, he said quietly. I waved. Yes, I used all 5 fingers to wave, and they weren't clenched into a fist. I started writing. Hi, Billy. It's been a long time. Congratulations. You have a beautiful daughter and a beautiful family. He came forward to read it and smiled. Thanks, he said, sounding like he was going to cry. I want you to know, Pete, I'm so sorry about Sabrina. I never meant to hurt her or you. I nodded. I was doing that too much. I know, I scribbled. It took a long time, but I'm over it. I'm not angry anymore. There's no hate coming. I talked to Linda about how I felt just after I got to LA. What happened was an accident. It was fate's cruel joke that it was you driving the truck that hit us, but I can't hold a grudge forever. I forgive you. Then he did cry a little and thanked me. You don't know how much I've wanted to make it better, he said. Everything. What happened with Linda, what happened on the job years ago, the accident. I wrote rather than nod. I know, I said. Linda told me you were frantic when you realized it was us in the car. She's been gone for more than 2 years now. It's time we put her to rest. He nodded and Linda took her daughter so Billy could give me an awkward hug, trying not to hurt me. He was crying tears of relief and stood back so that Linda could formally introduce me to her daughter, Petra Elizabeth. She put her in bed with me, letting her snuggle into my chest for a little bit. We saw the truck, she told me. It's a miracle you're alive. I looked at her and shrugged. I wanted to tell her about Sabrina, but right now, I was holding my niece and she was looking at me curiously, not fussing, but not certain who I was or why I was holding her. After a few minutes, Linda took her and I started to write. Might have been a miracle, or it might have been that I bought my truck at least in part because of the safety rating. Sabrina was in the truck with me in the second before the crash. She was? Linda asked. What did she say? She mostly pissed me off, I admitted. She told me that I'd had her on a pedestal and she wanted me to stop. She accused me of still holding back, even though I'd been to a party that night. She was trying to make me angry. She laughed at me when I told her that I was certain I was gonna die. She said, "We'll see," and then she vanished and everything happened at once. They read that and Billy didn't look surprised. So Linda had clearly told him about my visits from her. She nodded. "We're all glad you didn't die," she told me. "Thanks," I wrote, then hesitated for a moment. "I am too, I think." She read that and kissed my cheek before explaining to Billy. "Ham's been wanting to go to Sabrina since that night," she said. "Now, it doesn't sound like he does." I nodded and scribbled quickly. The accident was everything I'd wanted when I'd pleaded with God to let me be with her. If I still wanted that, I'd be filled with disappointment right now. Of course, that could be the drugs they have me on. They have to be good if I'm not suffering. I cracked a bit of a smile at the end of that one. They read it and nodded. "That's good news," Linda told me. "There's one other person who'd like to say hello, and then we'll all let you get some rest," she assured me. "Who?" I asked. "Eve," she admitted hopefully. I looked at her flatly. "Tell me," was all I wrote. "I couldn't come out here and not tell her," she explained. "She's met everyone outside. She's kind of committed to meeting you now." "Okay," I wrote, but I was very reluctant and I know it showed through. They all slipped out and Linda came back with a young woman who must have been Eve. "Hi," she said shyly. "Hi," I wrote, and then underneath it I wrote, "I don't recommend the food at this restaurant." That made her laugh some. "It's okay. I don't think I like the dress code here. Backless is not my style. Not gonna lie, you look pretty screwed up." "I haven't seen," I admitted. She took her phone out and snapped a picture, showing it to me. I was still pretty messed up, but I was probably better than I had been. It had been 10 days since the accident, after all. "Damn," I wrote. "That's screwed up." She nodded. "You in any pain?" she asked. "Only when I move or laugh," I replied. "So what happened to the other driver?" I asked the question that had been on my mind. "She got a sprained wrist and a bloody nose," Eve told me in disgust. "She walked away from the accident. She's a 16-year-old princess. She was drunk at the time, and she was going fast enough to send your truck spinning through the intersection to slam into the closest building. I, may have accidentally gotten a copy of the traffic cams in the area and the police report." "Still keeping tabs on me?" I asked with a slight smirk. "Linda asked me to find out what I could as soon as she found out," she admitted. "When I saw the accident, I started scouring for anything I could find. I gave the whole file to Linda, but when you go to sue her, the judge is going to throw a fit." "Not her first rodeo?" I asked. "Her third time getting behind the wheel," she said. "She boosted Daddy's car when she was 14 and crashed it. No one got hurt, but Daddy's checkbook got a workout for the people that owned the car she ran into. She did the same thing last year, and someone did get hurt. She caught some probation over that and Daddy made it all go away again. Demand all kinds of zeros on the check if you're going to let her off the hook." I nodded, wincing at the pain it caused my neck. "I wonder why her father keeps bailing her out," I wrote, musing over that issue. "She's famous, and he's more famous. She's on some teenage vampire show, and he's the executive producer. He's done some movies, but mostly he's big Hollywood money." She brought up a picture of the girl from her IMDb page. Chloe Sinclair was her name. She was pretty and smiling in the image. It was definitely the girl who'd been driving the SUV, but she looked a lot different, given the tears and fear and messed up hair that I'd seen just before the accident. "Yup, that's the girl I saw," I confirmed. "You saw her?" Eve gaped. Just before the accident, time slowed to a crawl. She was crying and scared, but it was the same girl, I wrote. "Wow," Eve commented. "You could only have seen her for a split second and she made that kind of impression?" "Well, it was a split second that broke my pelvis," I pointed out, putting a smiley face at the end of the sentence. She smirked. "The age of consent in California is 18, she reminded me. "You'd have to wait a couple of years to get that kind of romance out of her." I shrugged and started writing. "She's not my type anyway. You paint a picture of a girl that's never had to face consequences. She drinks, breaks the law, hurts people, and then counts on her father to spend his money to fix it for her. The world probably would have been a better place if she'd forgotten to put her seatbelt on and launched herself through the windshield like a mortar shell." They read that and winced, but Eve laughed too. "I think the only consequences that girl understands are paid on her back and result in her getting a part in a movie." "I doubt that." You said that her father bankrolls her latest project. She probably never had to do more than bat her eyelashes and pout, I wrote. Oh, someone doesn't like daddy's girls, Eve enthused. What did a daddy's girl ever do to you? Betty Simons, I wrote and looked at Linda significantly. She's someone we went to school with, she told Eve. She used sex to get ahead. She was good at it until she tried it on Ham. When he wouldn't give her the time of day, she used her charm to make his life kind of miserable. He got beat up a few times by guys she was stringing along. She was one of those girls that promised the world and never delivered. Ham despised her for it. I nodded slightly in agreement with her assessment. Where's she now? Eve asked. Divorced, Linda said smugly. Her husband caught her being a little too charming with her boss, Dr. Knotts. He enforced their prenup and tossed her out on the street. He also used all his influence to kill her Dr. Knotts practice. She's still in Denver. She works as a receptionist in a dentist's office now. Quite a step down from being a doctor's personal assistant and married to a very promising lawyer. That made me smile. I promised myself that if I ever made millions of dollars, I'd go there for a cleaning and gloat a little. By this point, I was starting to get a little worn down and it showed. The ladies excused themselves and I lapsed into sleep, dreaming about playing catch with Billy and Mike when we were kids. In the dream, Linda and Mary were watching us and talking to a third woman that I couldn't see. They were adults, but we were still kids, so it was almost like we had parents watching us. The next day, Mike, Mary and I talked for an hour or so. They'd gotten me a lawyer to help with the lawsuit and introduced me before they left. He was hard-nosed and middle-aged. He told me what he'd been able to find out, and a lot of it was the same as Eve. Police had compelled a blood sample when she refused the breath test, and she tested positive for narcotics in addition to having a blood alcohol that should have rendered her incapable of even standing up. You should be prepared for an initial offer to settle the matter out of court. Laugh at it, he told me. Your story is worth $1 million to the right gossip outlet. TMZ would pay it in a heartbeat to get you to talk about your injuries. They'll offer you about half that in medical costs. I nodded. I've heard that the other driver has a history of accidents, I wrote. This is supposed to be her third time crashing a car. Third? He blurted. I only have two. She supposedly stole her father's car twice. Once when she was 14. She only hit a parked car that time and money smoothed it over. Last time, someone got hurt and the money made it go away. I'm her third strike. He mulled that over. You found that out from a hospital bed? He asked. Not exactly, I admitted. I work in computer security. I have several friends, colleagues, and coworkers that are what you'd call white hat hackers. When word got out that I was hurt by a drunk driver, they started looking into the driver. He nodded. I didn't know about the parked car. We might not be able to use that. I nodded. You have the traffic cam footage from the crash? I asked. There is none, he said. They said there's a technical glitch that deleted all the footage and the backups. That's highly suspicious, I wrote. It sounds like Daddy's money is buying some justice for his little girl. He nodded. Unfortunately, all we can do is demand an investigation, which they'll drag their feet on. I'll see if I can get the footage, I told him. Your friends? I nodded again. Damn it. I needed to stop that. He smiled. If we can get our hands on that, we've got them over a barrel, he said. If it's like that, then I want to bankrupt them both. Her father's just as guilty as she is at this point. He's proven to her that she can do whatever she wants, and there's no consequences. So long as he has the means, he'll continue to bail her out. He nodded. I like your attitude. Go for the throat, and to hell with her being 16. I shrugged feebly. She could have killed someone. It could just as easily have been a family of 4 coming home from a New Year's party. Me being in a truck probably saved my life. If she'd slammed into a car instead of a hire vehicle, I'd probably be dead. Did the cops calculate how fast she was going? They were on a high-speed chase. It was over 90, he told me. I'd personally love to see jail time for her. I know it'll be minimal, but it might be the wake-up call she needs to get her head out of her butt. He chuckled at that. I expect that she'll try to sneak in here to try to make you a more personal offer to settle everything. I'm going to have a recording device planted in the room so that you're protected from that. We'll have to put up some sort of sign that the room's under surveillance for legal purposes. I've also asked that your visitor list be restricted to the people that have been to see you already. That way, if she's in here, she's trespassing. I have a few others that I expect, but that should be fine. Just talk to the family and let them know that everyone coming to the hospital to see me needs to let the staff know ahead of time. I wrote that down and flexed my hand, noting that it was starting to cramp with all the writing I'd been doing. Wish I had my laptop, I commented. I'll let them know outside that you want it, he promised. We worked out a system where we put a sign on the door that declared the room was under surveillance so that no one could enter the room without knowing they'd be recorded, and the recorder turned out to be a camera that did both video and audio. We put it in the back corner, so it would see the door when it opened. Mike and Mary went home after bringing the kids in to see me after the lawyer left. They said they'd call and promised to be back when I needed them. Linda and Bill left a few days after that, and that left me with my mothers here. They took good care of me, making sure I had what I needed, but eventually they had to return to their lives too. Rosa returned to Austin with a short letter for Lizzie, thanking her for being concerned and assuring her that I was on the road to recovery. I was promised a place to stay if I needed to convalesce. I had no doubt about the care I'd get. Rosa would take care of it. She'd head to my favorite hangout and rally the friends who remembered me to help nurse me back to health until I was up and about again. Then it was just me and the biological one. It wasn't so bad. I told her I'd forgiven Bill and even let him hug me. That made her happy, and her eyes brimmed with tears. The Pierces came to see me, and they were horrified at the state of me. I was a mess of casts and surgeries. My prognosis was at least 3 months of bed rest and another 3 to 6 months of physiotherapy. They stayed for a few nights, staying in the apartment with Mom. I talked to them about seeing Sabrina during the crash and talking to her a couple of times in the past when I'd needed her. The thought of their daughter being able to watch over me gave them some peace, and we all wept a little. They were tears of relief, though, not sorrow or loss as they'd been in the past. We talked and they told me that if I was ever coming back to Denver, I could stay with them. I'd gotten the same promise from Linda and from Mom. I promised them that I'd let them know the next time I was passing close to Denver. I haven't been back since the accident, but your place was always my first stop when I talked about visiting. Not your mother's place? Hope asked, surprised. Things were very strained in the family, even before the accident. Afterwards, they broke down completely. This is the first time I've spoken to some of them since the end of my first year at college. They nodded, understanding. We know that if Sabrina had lived, that the two of you would be married by now, Carl told me. We've come to think of you as our own. I know we never told you that, but I know that I would have given Sabrina away to you someday, so I hope you'll think of us as family. I smiled at them both. I already do, I told them. I don't call as much as I used to, but I've tried to keep in touch. I'm sorry I didn't call on New Year's. I decided to sleep in that day. I smirked a little at the joke. Hope smiled at me and leaned over to kiss my cheek. You just get well and promise us more grandchildren. Mike can't do all the work. I chuckled at that. I promise, I said. Once I find a girl that I can be proud to bring home to meet you. We had a pleasant visit and they got along well enough with my mother, but had avoided the topic of her third son while they were there. January turned into February. I hadn't heard from Chloe Sinclair, her father, or a lawyer so far. I had gotten my settlement for the accident in Denver. The $40,000 was a drop in the bucket compared to my medical fees here, and I still felt it was a slap in the face for the years of anguish I'd spent after losing Sabrina, but it was the way the system worked. Eve had come through and supplied, anonymously, of course, all the traffic cam footage that had been lost by LAPD. The lawyer was delighted by that and told me that he was still playing cat and mouse with their lawyers, and they were claiming that Chloe was just a passenger in the SUV, and the driver had taken off running and not been noticed. Eve had also left behind some sort of program to tell her when people accessed the specific traffic cams from my accident and had the login of the person that deleted them. That got turned over to the district attorney and turned into a rather embarrassing investigation. I heard later on that he ended up in a wheelchair when someone in prison found out he'd been a cop. That all happened much later, though. It was decided that I was going to get my pound of flesh first. Valentine's Day, the casts on my arm and leg came off. I was still on bed rest for another month due to the pelvic fracture and hip damage, but I had both my arms working again. Eve came to see me about once a week. She'd hacked the hospital records to see how my condition was. She and I settled into a friendship that didn't quite manage to develop past friends into more. We'd never be lovers, that was for sure, but she was more comfortable with me. It turned out that she was not the girl in the costume picture she'd sent to me. She'd found it online. When you're feeling all better, I have a present for you, she said with a smirk when she came to see me late in the day on Valentine's Day. Oh? I asked, intrigued. Your gift of the traffic cams was about the best thing I could have hoped for, I told her. What do you have that can top that? You'll see, she said with another smirk. Before I give it to you, though, I need to give you a high-end course on actual hacking. When you're working for the government or law enforcement, they generally frown on some of the techniques and the particular uses for them. I nodded, and we got to work on turning me into one of the bad guys. It wasn't about being a criminal, at least not to me. I learned how to protect my identity while hacking, how to prevent myself from getting caught by police or by the kinds of private security firms that I actually worked for, and she got me into techniques. She didn't have me do anything illegal, but showed me where the weak points were and how to use them to break in. She helped me find the back doors and promised to show me spots in the deep web and dark web that I could use to further my hacking hobby later on if I chose to follow the rabbit hole. It was interesting, and some of it made me more interested in my own job, thinking of these problems as leaks and wondering how to plug them. Others made me think of selfish ways to use them. There were several adult sites that I'd never wanted to pay to access, but thought I might try to access from below to get the content. I never planned to get rich or collapse the banking system or hack the CIA or any of that legend-level hacking. I thought it might be fun to access some free adult movie and play a prank or two. I was starting to see from Eve's lessons how immensely hard it was to hide from someone online, and was kind of proud that I'd managed to stay under her radar for so long in Austin. She had access to a lot of databases that she shouldn't, and she managed to keep access without anyone coming down on her. Mom had stayed with me through this time, and I was set to be released sometime in April. I'd started my physical rehabilitation with my arm and some gentle movements of my leg. By the time the doctors told me that my pelvis was healed enough to get up and moving, my muscles had deteriorated a lot. I had both Mom and Eve worried about me when they saw me after my first sessions. I was white-faced, weeping from the pain and desperate for relief and sleep. I gradually got better, and the pain medication got to be less and less necessary. I got to like the painkillers though, and that was a problem. The doctors pulled me off of them as soon as I told them I was worried about addiction from my own reactions. After that, I had to make do with far less impressive relief, and I struggled through most of April. Dad finally came to see me about a week before I was released. He hated to fly, and the roads through Colorado were too treacherous in winter to drive, but he finally managed to find a window of decent weather and drove down to see me. I'd kept everyone aware of my condition with photos and video chats, so he wasn't in shock at my condition. He admitted that I looked a lot better than I had initially. Fortunately, I was able to speak at that point. The swelling in my jaw and face had gone down quite a bit, and the bones had healed. I was still short 9 teeth, but that was a problem for a dental surgeon once I was on the road to recovery. "Look, Pete," he started awkwardly. "I'm not real good with words. I'm glad you're doing better. We were all worried when we found out about the accident. Your brother said that you, and he talked some while he was here and straightened things out. I was happy to hear that. I was worried that you weren't going to ever get to a point that you could forgive him. That's what I was trying to do that day. I'm sorry that I didn't listen to you when you tried to leave." I nodded. "I'm sorry I kicked you," I told him. There was no way we were going to solve anything in that room. Everyone told me that they were angry or disapproved, but you all had time to process it. Trapped in a room with them and you and Mom supporting them, I lost my mind. At the time, it was them or me in my head. I couldn't be anything but enraged at them, and you two weren't far behind. I needed time to get out of there. Things might have been better if I'd woken up without them watching me, but I still would have needed to get out of there. I was bitter and pissed off. I'd held back from a lot of the party life in LA because I was trying to stay faithful to Linda for that first year. It pissed me off to know that they'd been at it even before I left. He nodded. "I'm good at construction," he admitted. "Not so good with people. Your mother told me afterwards that calling you names earned me some of what I'd gotten. Choking you out accounted for the rest. I'm just glad you stopped when you did." I nodded. "I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to kill Billy, but Mike got him back into the house before I could get my hands on him." "That's okay," he said. "There were plenty of days I wanted to kill Billy myself, especially in those early days with him and Linda. I couldn't well whip him every time he came home from a date with her, but every so often, he'd find himself in trouble for something minor. I never grounded you for not shoveling the driveway, did I?" I shook my head. "No, I can't say that you did," I pointed out. "Billy got grounded for that?" "Twice," he confided. "I generally find something to punish him for once a month, and I'd ground him for it. Your mother gave me grief about it a few times, but none of us approved of what they did to you. Once it came out, well, if he hadn't been standing with Linda, I might have let you boys scrap it out. The way he told you was designed to push your buttons. We didn't say anything to him until after Linda's prom, and then we lowered the boom on him. We sat the two of them down and told them that they'd torn our family apart with their reckless attitude. We grounded Billy for the summer and told Linda that we had no control over her to ground her, but that she couldn't come over to the house while Billy was grounded. This was a story I hadn't heard before, and I smiled a little, thinking about how that must have irritated Billy. "How long did it last?" I asked. "We let him off after a month," he admitted. "By the end of it, he was miserable. Nothing like having your brother steal your girl, but still pretty miserable. We told them both that if they ever screwed up like that again, we'd never speak to them again. It's nice to know that the road wasn't smooth for them, I said, not just from the standpoint of an angry victim, but because they worked for it. They're committed to each other, and that's important for their marriage. An expert on marriage now? He asked, amused. Mike and Mary were my whole family for years. I watched their marriage from the start. I felt like Sabrina, and I would have had the same kind of relationship if she'd made it. He nodded. I wished we could have known her, he said sadly. She looked like she made you very happy. We were all glad of that. I may have made some crack or another about it, but I hoped she'd help you get over the anger. She did, I told him. She still does. I talked to him about the time Sabrina came to visit me, and he nodded attentively. Grandma Hamilton had been superstitious, and he was familiar with ghosts and spirits. The missing bottle was an interesting one to him. Your grandma would have loved hearing about that, he told me affectionately. She loved those tales. She'd probably fuss over you and tell you that you had the sight or something. I hope she's brought you some peace. I don't know about that, I said. She got me to stop drinking mostly, and she got me to forgive Bill, though. Those are minor miracles. His visit was pleasant like that. We talk about safe topics, and he showed me respect. Maybe it was the way I'd handled him that day when Bill and Linda came out, or the fact that I never crawled back with my tail between my legs. But he treated me like an equal, and I was grateful. It was the first time I'd been treated like that by my father. My physical therapy frequently left me whimpering and weeping by the end of the session, and more than once, I had to be helped back to my room and put to bed, but I steadily got stronger. I was a mess still and was limping badly. My leg just didn't seem as limber as it had before, but I had hope that I'd get my mobility back. I got an offer from Chloe Sinclair's lawyer. The offer was insultingly low, and the lawyer smugly declared that we had no way of knowing who'd been driving the SUV. He sat in my hospital room with the check in hand, and the non-disclosure agreement warmed up. He wasn't so smug when I declared that I'd clearly seen his client behind the wheel and no one else in the vehicle with her. We also have other evidence that proves that your client was the only occupant of the vehicle, my lawyer piped up. Your offer is rejected. I have a counteroffer, I said lightly. My lawyer looked at me warily, since we'd never discussed an offer. I'm listening, he said. Add 2 zeros to that figure, I said. Then have Ms. Sinclair successfully complete rehab for her substance abuse problems and perform 2,000 hours of community service with a charity that works with the victims of drunk drivers, and I'll agree to never speak about the matter again in public or private. That's a ridiculous offer, he scoffed. So was yours, I said. Your client has a history of getting behind the wheel of a car and acting like a spoiled brat. If I'd been driving a car instead of a truck, I'd be dead. Someone managed to pay someone to delete the traffic camera footage from the LAPD database. These matters also have a history of getting swept under the rug. If that's what you want from me, you'll goddamn pay for it. I have no reason to show mercy to her. I'm in pain every single day because that girl was drinking underage, driving drunk, and fleeing from the cops. That's my offer. It's good until my lawyer talks me out of it and convinces me that we can get more. He rolled his eyes and shook his head. You'll never prove half of this in court, he said. We're negotiating in good faith because Ms. Sinclair's vehicle was involved in the accident, but she's not at fault. I looked at my lawyer, and he took over. If your position is that Ms. Sinclair is blameless, we'll be happy to go to trial, he said with a smug smile of his own. Her previous 2 traffic accidents will dovetail well with the police accounts and the physical evidence. Her blood on the driver's side airbag, her prints being the only ones on the wheel, her blood work showing illegal narcotics in addition to alcohol she should never have been drinking all point to a celebrity out of control. My client hasn't been able to work and probably never will again. At his age, that means his degree is useless to him. Tens of thousands of dollars and years of his life devoted to study, and he'll never be able to hold down a job again. Chronic pain, permanent scarring, loss of mobility, decline in his quality of life, diminished ability to form relationships in the future, anxiety from the crash, depression. The list goes on, counselor. Your client is also in for criminal charges before this is all over. A court battle will be ugly and will permanently damage your client's reputation with the public. She depends on that for her work. Maybe she'll luck out and be able to get hired for Mel Gibson's next movie, but otherwise, she'll become a virtual pariah in Hollywood as public opinion turns against her. Her lawyer looked sour about it, but went away with a promise to discuss our proposal to his client. We'd managed not to mention that we had the traffic cam footage. We agreed that our last gambit was to release it to TMZ and then put an unreasonable offer on the table with the promise to mention that Chloe had stepped up to make certain I was taken care of if I was interviewed. Finally, the day came when I was being released. My parents brought me home from the hospital, and I was immediately glad that my building had an elevator. I was still having a lot of trouble with my leg and hip and I lived on the 6th floor. I'd have never made it if I'd had to take the stairs. I finally got to sleep in my own bed again and get back to some of my life. Mom and Dad stayed for a couple of weeks, getting me settled. I had to get a new truck, so we went off to look at them. I still had a lot of savings to fall back on, but that wouldn't last forever. I got another large pickup with a crew cab. I wanted something big and tough enough to keep me safe if I was in another accident. I kept the paperwork for it with the rest of my lawsuit materials and vowed to make sure that Chloe paid for it. I want to start pressuring them, I told my lawyer one day in June. I was mostly done with my therapy and I was still having some trouble getting around. I guessed I was always going to have a problem. They're sitting pretty and I'm screwed. I'm running short of money. My therapy's just about done and I'm not going to get much better. What do you want to use to pressure them? He asked. How about the threat of telling my story? I asked. I can talk to the press about how poorly they've treated me, how pitiful their offers of compensation are, how I've never gotten so much as an apology from Chloe, how the traffic camera footage was mysteriously erased and how this isn't the first time she's hurt someone in a car crash. He nodded and smiled. He picked up the phone and made a call to their lawyer while I sat there. After the pleasantries, he got down to business. You're still sticking to the figure of $750,000 for your final offer? He asked. Right. I see. You'll expect a non-disclosure agreement about the accident, and the whole affair goes away? Well, I can tell you now that we'll see you in court. My client could get $1 million just for an interview with TMZ. You can bet but that he'll find his way onto CNN to talk about the problem of celebrities without morals. He also has a lot of friends that work online. It'll probably trend on social media. People will start picking it up and Chloe Sinclair will end up on celebrity rehab when she can't land a gig doing anything else. Oh, you'll get back to me? He scoffed. That's what you said 2 weeks ago. My client and I are sick of you stalling. You either come to the table with an offer worth looking at, or we're done trying to meet in the middle. We'll sue your client for every penny of her stated net worth and a percentage of every dollar she'll make for the rest of her life. I'll let you know that my client is suffering, and he feels like public opinion is the only tool he has left. He's eager to tell his story. If you aren't willing to give him a reason not to, he'll tell the story to TMZ, CNN, and every online news venue he can find. I would imagine that telling his tale to Nancy Grace would be the easiest money he'll ever make. I sat back and smiled at the part of the exchange I could hear. I wished I could see the look on Chloe's face when she heard this. I'd see some of the aftermath, but I probably wouldn't get to see the moment that she found out I was going public. Eve had hacked her computer and had her webcam turned on. Only she and I had the login info, but she'd already given us years of ammunition. In addition to the various nudity that we'd captured from her wandering around in front of her computer getting changed, we were able to monitor her calls in her bedroom, access her video chats, and observe interactions with multiple individuals visiting her room at various times. Eve swore that there would be a bidding war over the nudes if I was willing to put them out there for sale. I guess Chloe's shitty little vampire drama show was popular with teens. Whether I sold them or not, I thought that there was a good chance that I'd catch her ranting about the case to one of her friends if this worked. We were talking about the dollar amount that we'd consider a fair offer while we waited. We agreed that my earning potential was somewhere around $7 million based on my current salary, promotions, and raises over the next 40 years. My hospital bills so far had been over $300,000 and I hadn't had reconstructive surgery to reduce scars. The doctors were talking about more surgery to remove scar tissue and help with my mobility, and I hadn't looked into options to replace my lost teeth. My pain and suffering had been unimaginable to me these past 6 months, and I'd also had to give up most of my hobbies. I'd never be able to dance competently again with my leg the way it was. I couldn't sit in hard chairs for long periods of time, so frequenting coffee houses or strip joints was a thing of the past. I could go to movies without too much discomfort, but I was still stiff and sore afterwards. I was depressed and miserable, and my prognosis was that I wasn't going to get much better. He explained to me that I was entitled to a chunk of money for my pain and suffering, the disruption to my life so far, the activities I'd have to give up because of my limitations in the future, and a few other little things, like psychological scarring. He pointed to me buying a large truck again, where a smaller car would be more economical in the city, and suggested that it was because I felt unsafe driving something smaller. We were still talking it out when his secretary paged him that Chloe's lawyers were on the phone. He picked it up, and they started haggling. We had a rough roadmap of about $10 to $12 million for the whole thing. Kyle, he said to his counterpart, your opening offer didn't even cover Mr. Hamilton's medical bills, and you haven't come up significantly since then. We calculate his loss of earning potential to be $7 million based on what he earned at the time of the accident and the reasonable raises and promotions he'd have been able to expect over 40 years of working. It was insulting. You knew it. I knew it. Miss Sinclair knew it. Her father knew it and Mr. Hamilton knew it. Yes, I know Mr. Hamilton's offer was unreasonable, but his was a little closer to the neighborhood than yours. Make me an offer, Kyle. I'll ask him. No, I don't need to get back to you. He's right here with me. Just give me a moment. He put the phone on mute and looked at me. They're offering $8 million, he said, and he looked like this was where we started negotiating in earnest. I frowned at that. Your fees come out of that amount though, right? He nodded. I'd have to pay my medical bills out of it and then live the rest of my life on it. What do you think? I think we hold out until they agree to 12 and agree to pay your medical and legal fees besides, he said. I thought about it and nodded for him to go based on that. Hi, Kyle, he said, going back to the phone. My client is pleased to hear your new offer. He's not accepting it, but I can tell you that he's hopeful that this means we're making real progress toward finding a number that we can all live with. You looking for a peek behind the curtain, Kyle? He asked, amused. Okay, your number would close if it also came with medical costs now and in the future and my legal fees paid out separately. It still needs to come up. Like I said, Mr. Hamilton will probably never work again. But if he does, it will be at a greatly reduced earning potential. He listened to a counter-proposal and made some agreeing sounds. We've decided on our bottom line, and I'm sure the Sinclairs have figured out what theirs is too. Let's dance. You're at $8 million. We'll counter with $15, plus legal and medical paid out. We're looking at a significant distance, but we're a lot closer than we were an hour ago. They hung up so he could take the offer back to his clients and promised a call back. We went back and forth like that for most of the morning. They countered with $9 million in expenses, and we countered with $13 million in expenses. They countered with $11 million, and after much discussion, we agreed to settle for that. I wouldn't be able to tell my story, but I wouldn't have to worry about money for the rest of my life. It was going to take some time to prepare the checks and the documents for signing, but at that point, I'd be able to live my life without worry again. I had 3 surgeries scheduled over the next 4 months, and then there would be dental repairs and cosmetic surgery to reduce scarring. By next summer, I'd know where I stood medically. The annual security conference came around and I was able to attend, so I did. I called Lizzie and made sure that she was still coming. She was staying with me for the week and then flying back to Texas. When she arrived, it was with a young man who held her hand and looked protective of her. She introduced him as Sean, her boyfriend, and hoped I wouldn't mind if he tagged along. They were a cute couple, and he was studying to be an architect. I told him I'd worked construction in a few places, so I had some understanding of what he was studying. Lizzie asked me about my recovery, and I was candid with her about it. I'd had my dental surgery by this point and was like new. The dental implants were individual replacement teeth that were screwed right into the jaw. They were top of the line, but my smile was as good as new. I was thrilled. I couldn't even feel the difference. I showed her some of the scars and told her I didn't think her boyfriend would appreciate her looking at the ones on my hip. We attended the conference and I introduced her to all the people I'd met the previous year, including Eve. The 4 of us had a lot of fun at the conference, and I was delving into the rabbit hole of hacking fairly well, but I never considered myself to be an expert on the subject. I was more of an enthusiast who now had a lot of time on my hands. I learned more dirty tricks to fix injustices, both social and legal. I attended lectures on ethics and hacking, deep web locations, dark web atrocities. We hacked phones and tablets and game consoles and smartwatches and a dozen other devices to tweak the functionality on them or determine if they were secure or not. I learned a lot about system security and managed to update everyone I knew about what had happened with the crash. The week flew past and I felt like I'd had a small taste of life for the first time since New Year's. I got out, socialized, learned things, and tried to participate in as many demonstrations as I could. Lizzie had a blast and made more friends than I did. She was young and pretty. I spent a lot of time with Sean, who was tasked with helping me out as I stumped around with a cane and a limp that got worse as the day dragged on. When I put them on the plane at the end of the week, I got a handshake from him and a very gentle hug from her. She had her way in for the conference from now on. She just had to stay on the mailing list. After the conference, life settled into a routine for me. I was mostly concerned with getting better. I'd been in to see my boss, and he told me that he had a job for me whenever I was ready to come back to work, but in the short term, he needed to fill the position. I knew that was coming and told him I appreciated it, and got help from one of the guys in taking my personal possessions back to the truck. I'd had visits from most of the family for a long weekend, or a week for Mom and Rosa. They all arranged it so that I wasn't alone for too long and so that I wasn't too crowded. Eve stopped by more regularly, and we got to be good friends. We were never going to be better than that, but that was no one's fault. I had my surgeries, invested my money carefully, and settled into as much of a life as I could manage. I was still sore and having trouble getting around. I went in for the reconstructive surgery on my scars, and that's where my life changed again. Dear listeners, the next part of this story will be released soon. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.